All right, hello everyone. My name is Justin Jones, and welcome to the Fuse May 24th, 2016 tutorial on the topic of using Amazon AWS to host a free WordPress site. We actually tried to live stream this event and had some issues with the live stream, so I'm doing a re-recording of the material. We'll be going through a brief slide deck to talk about AWS and WordPress a little bit, followed by an actual live demo inside of Amazon AWS in which we will deploy an actual WordPress site, demonstrate that it's live, and then go through the process of updating and operating it. All right, so for anyone who's not familiar with AWS, AWS is Amazon Web Services, and Amazon Web Services has a ton of services that are used for a variety of IT functions and general computing functions, including a cloud storage service that's used by a lot of websites, virtual machine hosting in the form of Amazon EC2, which is what we're going to be using today, a variety of database serving services, including DynamoDB and Redshift, DNS services, route in the form of Route 53 backup, in the form of Amazon Glacier, and there's a whole bunch of them, probably in excess of 100 services available currently. Amazon Web Services is used by a large portion of the Fortune 500, as well as a whole bunch of small businesses. So businesses both big and small use Amazon Web Services. Below we have some company icons to give you an idea of some of the AWS customers out there, including Netflix, Adobe, Pinterest, Uber, Citibank. Amazon themselves actually uses Amazon Web Services to run their internet web store. That's really kind of what the solution was built out of, but they actually decided to start offering it externally, and it really took on with a lot of companies that didn't want to invest in running their own data center and wanted to be able to kind of outsource infrastructure as a service. Also NFL and Square. All right, so one question that I always like to start off with is, should you use Amazon Web Services? And the simplest answer is probably not. It's probably a no, because as we're going to talk about, when you use Amazon Web Services, and it really depends on which of the services that you're using, but in our case, we're specifically talking about a whole virtual machine in the form of Amazon EC2. You're really taking on the administration of a server, which, if you understand what you're getting into and it's something that you're interested in learning or managing or doing, it gives you a very powerful platform to do so. But if you really just want a WordPress site and you don't care about having to do any of the backend server administration, there may be other better options for you. So we're going to start off with a maybe and have a little bit of discussion about the pluses and minuses of running WordPress on your own private server. All right, so another question that we want to tackle is, Amazon Web Services free? And the answer is kind of yes and no. You can get a small server, which is a T2 micro instance or a T1 micro instance, free for 12 months when you sign up for a new account. That means a free server, but a free server like free puppy, not like free beer. As anybody who's gotten a free puppy before knows, there's a lot of responsibilities that come with owning a puppy, and a lot of those responsibilities, like feeding it, cost money. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide, where we can kind of talk about the care and feeding of your very own server. So here on the left, we have, what do you get with a free puppy as far as responsibilities? You need to feed it daily. You need to water it daily. You have to clean up poop. You need to walk and exercise the puppy, and you need to take it to the vet when it's sick. And if you're not willing to do those things, you should not. I repeat, you should not get a puppy. If you're going to be one of those people that just leaves your dog inside all day long and doesn't walk it and doesn't take it to the vet when it's sick, don't get a dog. Same thing with a WordPress server. If you're not willing to go in and update the operating system, maybe weekly, it just kind of depends, but at least on somewhat of a regular basis. If you're not willing to update WordPress, if you're not willing to remote into your server by SSHing in and run all the updates for your full LAMP stack, if you're not willing to do backups or security inspections, or if it gets hacked, try to hire somebody who can actually work on it. Don't be that guy. Don't get a server. Go with one of the other hosted options so that you don't have to do those administrative tasks. All right. So if it's free for the first 12 months, how much does this server cost you after for the second year going forward? And we have a little price chart here. You can see the pricing for a T2 Micro. These change all the time. These prices are current as of, second half of May 2016. But if you multiply it out, 0.013 dollars per hour, and yes, they do bill these servers per hour. Multiply that times 24 hours in the day, 365 days a year, you're looking ballpark somewhere around $114 a year, or $9.49 a month. If you know you're going to use the server continuously for an entire year or 3 years, you can get some special deals called reserved instances and save some money by paying for all of that up front at cost savings of maybe 34 to 56%. So maybe you could go as low as $50, $60 a year. If you have a really high traffic server, you may need to scale up to a small, medium, or large instance, in which cases your costs go up, but you do have that option. If you need more compute power, more memory because you have a lot of visitors, more network bandwidth, that's available, and you can reconfigure your server to have those features and be able to support a much larger amount of traffic. All right, so alternatives for WordPress. Besides hosting on Amazon AWS or a similar VM hosting, we have some other options here like hosting on WordPress.com or DreamHost, which I respectively call managed hosting for something like WordPress.com, which means you don't have to manage any of the underlying infrastructure, or something like DreamHost or Bluehost or one of those others, which I call a shared hosting provider. And you can kind of see the pluses and minuses and the features that you get for each of these. Pretty much any of them these days, you can use your own domain name. It may cost you extra money. One of the big key features that turn a lot of people away from WordPress.com or managed hosting is very limited support for plugins. Once you start becoming a WordPress power user, there's going to be some plugins that you want to install, and then you're going to need probably shared hosting or a dedicated VM to be able to do that. Things like FTP access aren't available on WordPress.com. If you need shell access for going in and running commands on the server locally, generally you're not going to get that with WordPress.com, and generally you're not going to get it with shared hosting either. You may be able to get a special exception and email them a copy of your driver's license and fill out a bunch of disclaimer forms and maybe get access, but most of the time these days you can't. Kind of with direct database access, you can get that with shared hosting. Noisy Neighbor is actually a pretty interesting case to look at. And essentially what it means is when you're in a shared hosting environment like DreamHost or Bluehost, what can happen is if you're on a server with somebody else that has a really busy website, their website being so busy can actually make your website slower. Why is that? Well, they're both running on the same machine, and their heavy use of the database impacts you because you're on the same database server. Their usage of the CPU or the memory of the other resources. It's kind of like if you live in an apartment and your neighbor's having huge parties all the time, you have to deal with the traffic in the parking lot, you have to deal with the noise, even though it's not, your apartment, it's not your website, those are still things that you contend with a noisy neighbor. Amazon and other VM hosting, generally you don't have to deal with that because they're actually going to heavily throttle those other users, even though it's somewhat of a shared environment, so that they can only use a certain amount of CPU, a certain amount of RAM, or a certain amount of disk I/O or network bandwidth. There are probably some shared hosting providers out there that do that throttling too. So that's something you may have to be worried about. I've encountered it personally on other shared hosting providers before, so it's something you need to be aware of. Another thing we like to talk about is increasing resources. If your site goes viral, if you have a product and they demo it on Oprah and all of a sudden you go from having like 50 visitors a day to having 100,000 or 1 million visitors a day, a lot of times if you're on a shared hosting site or something similar, a private server, you're going to get overloaded, you don't have enough network bandwidth, your website's going to get knocked offline or be returning errors saying that the site's too busy. If you're on a platform like Amazon AWS, you may be able to just go in and up the instance size, even if it's a temporary bump, to something a lot larger, and they have a bunch of extra network bandwidth, bunch of disk I/O memory. You can increase those resources to deal with the extra surge and handle that. Something like WordPress.com It varies, but I've seen people have negative experiences with having a large amount of traffic come to those sites as well, so it's something to inspect. And finally is, support for fine-tuning performance, modifying, PHP settings, changing MySQL database settings, changing things like maximum file size or fine-tuning Apache or any of these power user type operations that you may want to do. Definitely not on managed hosting. You don't have access to any of that. Something like shared hosting like DreamHost. Depends on the setting in the host. Some yes, some no. You really have to do your research, but I've seen people run into settings that they just can't change that they really wish they could. And on Amazon, yes, you have access to the entire stack all the way down to the actual underlying Linux operating system and can change pretty much anything that you want, which can be a blessing and also a curse. If you break it, you're responsible for fixing it. It's going to be hard to get somebody to help you with that, and you're essentially responsible for making sure that everything is running correctly. All right, so we're going to move straight into the live demo. We're about 11 minutes in, and I want to spend the majority of the time actually working in Amazon AWS and show you how to launch a WordPress site and kind of get it up and running and updated. So first thing we're going to do is fire up a new internet browser and go to AWS.Amazon.com. And if you, I'm going to hit sign into console here. If you have never signed into Amazon, it'll prompt you to make an account. And this is different than, your Amazon web shopping account. This is specific to Amazon Web Services. You can see I've already got my account here. I'm going to sign in, and I've actually set up something called two-factor authentication on my site. I absolutely suggest you do this on your account because it greatly increases the amount of security you have. I'm using Google Authenticator for my two-factor authentication, so I'm opening up my phone here and getting my code and typing it in. And this code changes like every 30 seconds or so. All right, we're in the Amazon Web Services console, and you can see all these different services that are offered here that all do stuff. You could do a multi-hour class on essentially any of these services. So there's a lot to learn about here. But in this particular instance, for WordPress, we're using Amazon EC2. So I click the EC2 link here, and it's going to load my EC2 dashboard. I already have a couple other servers that are running here. I've got a Windows server and my AutomateVI.com website that's running on a T2 micro instance. So let's go through launching a new instance and show you what you have to do to get a WordPress site up. So we're going to hit Launch Instance, and then here it's going to say, okay, these are your choices, and when you create your account, you're going to have to put a credit card number in. If you choose to order something that's not included in the free tier, they're going to send you a bill at the end of the month. So there's a nifty free tier only checkbox here. We're going to go ahead and check that. And these quick start AMIs or Amazon Machine Images that are listed right here are basically base operating systems. You can see Red Hat Linux, Ubuntu, Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2, Amazon Linux. We could absolutely get, Ubuntu Server Base and deploy that, and then install PHP and install a MySQL database and install Apache and then download WordPress and install that. And then this would be like a 4 or 5 hour long video instead of 20-30 minutes. So we're going to actually grab one that already has the software kind of installed and configured that's offered under Community AMIs. And there's a really cool company called Bitnami out there that pre-packages a lot of these with a lot of cool setup utilities. So I know what I want to search for in this case is Bitnami WordPress. So I'm going to enter that in and hit search. And even with Bitnami, they have a whole bunch of different offerings here. Let's see what the different versions are. I think I saw a 4.5. That sounds like a pretty late version. What if I add 4.5 onto my search? Okay, so let's see. Yeah, here we go. I want a 64-bit one, and I want Ubuntu Linux. So right here we've got Bitnami WordPress 4.5.1 running on Linux Ubuntu 4.0.4, 64-bit. And Elastic Block Store. So this is good. This is the one that I want. So, and we know it's going to be free tier eligible because we filtered for it. So I'm going to hit select here. All right, so it shows me all my different options here. Do you want T1 or T2 micro, etc.? You can see this is free tier eligible. That's checked. If I did a medium or a large at this point, then you're going to get billed because that's bigger. It's a bigger virtual machine than what's included with the free version. So you could kind of choose the different buttons down here. There's one that tries to get you further along and just get it launched quickly. We're going to go through and configure every option and explain what it is. So next, configure instance details. We're only ordering one. You could order, 10 of them, and then you'd have 10 machines, and only one of them would be free, and the other 9 you would get billed for. Request spot instances. You can Google that and kind of read about it, but it essentially allows you to kind of bid on instances, and if somebody else has one that they want to sell to you, it's kind of like an auction type service where maybe you can get it for a better deal. Next thing is network, and we have some options here for launching into EC2 Classic or VPC. In my case, because of the choice that I made here for the instance type, it wants me to put it in VPC. If you are logging in and you only have a choice for EC2 Classic, go ahead and go with that. What VPC is it's a virtual private cloud. So since I have multiple servers that I've already configured, say you were launching a 3-tier application that had a web server, an app server, and a database, and they all need to communicate on the back end very highly, at a very high speed, maybe like 10 gig internal networking or something. You can create a private network where all those machines can talk to each other in a local network, and then just publish the ones that you need to externally with an external IP, and maybe you'd even do a point-to-point VPN if you're a big company, between your company's local network and your virtual private cloud to have a connection in there. I still got 249 IPs available in my private cloud, so I'm going to deploy it to my private cloud. No problem to just deploy it into EC2 Classic. It's not going to be an issue to do that. Auto-assign public IP. We're going to go ahead and say, no, not for now. We will manually assign the public IP when it's time. My default setting for that is disable. IAM role is if you want to set up pre-configured user roles, so you can say use the same username and password, or maybe authentication key for those. You could do that. We're going to go through the process of doing that manually. And then shutdown behavior. Do you want to stop or terminate? This is foreign to a lot of people. The idea here is, when you shut this guy down, do you just want it to be like a turned off machine that you can turn back on, which is what most people expect, or do you want to delete the entire thing permanently? And that's foreign to a lot of people, but a lot of companies that use Amazon actually boot these machines up and fully configure them and run them for a while, and then as soon as they shut them down, they do just want to automatically delete it because the server is completely stateless. All the data is stored on another system, and they don't want to just have dead VMs that they don't need anymore sitting around. So for our purposes, this is a server that we don't want to delete. We're going to choose stop, and we're actually going to check this box which says protect against accidental termination, which essentially means protect against actual accidental deletion. You're going to have to check some extra boxes to delete the thing. And then the last option is CloudWatch detailed monitoring. So with detailed monitoring, this actually allows you to do something like monitor it more frequently, and you could monitor things like CPU usage or RAM usage or network utilization. And if all of a sudden the CPU shoots up to 100% for 5 minutes or more, or all of a sudden there's tons of network traffic going, it might automatically send you an email notification or a text notification. And then you could go look at the server and see if you have a whole bunch of people going on the website, or if somebody's trying to hack you or do a denial of service attack, and then investigate that. There's additional charges there that could potentially apply. There's a link here so you can read all about it. And then tenancy, run on a shared hardware instance. Do not do this on a dedicated instance. If you do a dedicated host, that's going to cost you like a lot of money. You're going to get a bill potentially for thousands of dollars. So unless you know what those options are, just stick with the default, which is a shared hardware instance. You're still going to get your guaranteed performance because of the throttling that's built into AWS, Amazon EC2. And then also we could add extra network interfaces and other devices if we wanted to, but we're not going to do that. Okay, next, storage. By default, on the free tier, you get a 10 gigabyte hard drive that is hosted on SSD with a maximum IOs per second of I think 3,000. If you need more space, which a lot of people for WordPress, if you have a really big site and a lot of photos or a lot of content, you're going to need more than 10 gigs. You can type in here whatever size you want or add extra hard drives, and Amazon will happily provision that for you and happily charge you extra money for that. So 10 gigs is free. If you need more, just be aware, go look at the pricing, look up how much you're going to have to pay, and go ahead and order it. Okay, next, instance tagging. All right, so tags are kind of key value pairs. You can add a couple of them if you want to. The default one that they're suggesting is name. So we're going to name our instance Fuse WordPress Demo. And other tags, people sometimes who haven't been familiar with metadata are kind of like, what would you use this for? I don't understand what it's for. Let's add another tag and say customer. And in this case, my customer is Fuse SPC Coworking. Why would I do this? Say I was hosting, 100 different VMs and 20 of them were Fuse VMs and some of them belong to another local business or multiple clients, but they're all on this one account. I could do a query and find all instances where customer equals Fuse so that I could manage those ones specifically, or maybe I have some other tags that give me some specific information about this, like this is a web server, so maybe I'd put a server type tag. TYPE, and it would be Apache Web, and maybe you do something else to tag and organize your servers. So that's kind of what tags are. Okay, next, configure security group. All right, so if we look here, security groups essentially are firewall settings, and so you can actually do different groups of firewall settings. This is a web server, so if we just think about it, we're going to need to remote in an SSH into it. So it's already got an SSH rule. Let's name our security group Fuse WordPress Demo. Description, firewall settings for WordPress server. Okay. Port 22 SSH is already added. Let's add another rule, and let's do HTTP. Port 80, we want anybody to be able to connect to that, and then we also need HTTPS for secure SSL, which is on port 443. Besides that, I don't need any ports open, but if you had a specific need, say this was a Windows server and you want to be able to remote desktop it, you would open port 3389 because that's what remote desktop or RDP opens up. Certain things like SSH, if you want to run really secure, you may actually come in here and remove this rule or do something like, say, only my IP, which right now it's going to look at my network settings and see what my external IP address is and say the only person in the entire world who can connect to this server through the firewall on SSH is this specific IP. Nobody else is going to be allowed in, and that would block it. Some people remove SSH, and then when you need to get in and administrate your server, go back, edit the firewall, add that port back, do your work, and then remove it again. So for now, I'm just going to leave it wide open, not the most secure thing in the world, but we're not using username password. We'll actually use key authentication. So I've got my firewall set up. I'm going to create this new security group for the firewall. Let's go to review and launch. All right, so it has, it's giving us a warning, your security group Fuse WordPress Demo is open to the world. You can access them from any IP address. They give you some suggestions for stuff you may want to do here. All right. So let's go ahead and hit launch here. And it's going to say, oh, you know what? You need a key pair. And a key pair is essentially how we're going to get into this. If you think about your server being a brand new house, we're building this brand new house. It's going to be all put together. You walk up to get inside the house and grab the doorknob and turn it, and it's locked. So how do you get in a locked house? You use the key. So it's saying, what do you want to do? You need a key for your new server. Do you want to choose an existing one or create a new one? We're going to actually choose to create a new key pair, and then we're going to name the key pair Fuse WordPress Demo. and then we're going to hit download key pair, and right here it is downloading that PIM file straight into my downloads folder. And it's telling you have to download that key file before you can continue. Store it in a secure and accessible location. You can't download it again after this point, and you can't get in with your key. So they give you one copy of the key. It's up to you to keep track of it. If somebody else gets it, they can get into your server. And if you lose it, you can't, nor can anybody else get into your server. So don't lose it. All right, so let's go ahead and hit launch instances. So it's doing all those activities. Going through right now, and we're going to wait a couple minutes. If we come back to our EC2 dashboard, you're going to see right here under running instances, it is in the process of being launched. So while we're doing that, I'm actually on Windows. I was using Mac OS earlier when I did this demo previously live, and the way you get in with SSH is a little bit different. Let's go look at this key file. So if I go in the folder and show you what this key file looks like, I don't mind editing it, because after this demo is done, I'm going to delete this instance and delete this key file. Let me show you what a key file looks like. So if we look at it in Notepad++ here, it's basically just a big long string of characters that's our private key, and this is what we're going to use to authenticate to get into the server. On Windows, to authenticate and get into the server, you actually need to SSH in, and the most popular SSH client to do that is Putty. However, Putty can't use PIM files. Everything has to be complicated, so Putty has to use a PPK file. So we need to take this PIM file and convert it into a PPK file so that we will be able to remote into our WordPress server. So let's do that. To do that, you get puttygen.exe. We're going to go to File, Load Private Key, go to my Downloads folder. Oh, we don't see it because it's filtered to PPK files. Change it to all files. Open the PIM key. It's telling us it's successfully imported it, and now you can save your private key. Okay, we hit Save Private Key. It's saying, wait, are you sure you want to save this key without a passphrase? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. You could add a passphrase, and then you would have to have the key and the passphrase, both of them, to be able to get into the server, which is even more secure. But we're going to say, yeah, go ahead and save it without, and I will call it Fuse WordPress ppk.ppk. Hit Save. Now if we look at my downloads folder, we will have a PPK file in here, and we will use that here in a little bit to connect to the Amazon instance. So let's go ahead and minimize this, go back, and as you can see, Fuse WordPress is deployed, but it has no public IP and no public DNS. So let's take care of that. We want a static external IP address, and Amazon offers that in the form of elastic IPs. So I hit elastic IPs, allocate new address, and it says, is your elastic IP going to be used in EC2 or VPC? In my case, it's VPC. You probably provisioned if you're a brand new user into EC2, so you need to choose the EC2 option. Hit yes, allocate. Boom, it gave me a new external IP address of 52.40.93.103. I'm going to check this, and I'm going to associate it with my instance. Go up here to Actions, Associate Address, and it's going to say, what instance do you want to associate it with? So if I click in here, it automatically pulls up all the instances that I have running in VPC, and I know the one that I want to do. If I had like hundreds of them, I would type, oh, this is Fuse, and it's going to filter that list down to Fuse WordPress demo. Select my instance, and it changes to the instance ID, which Amazon assigns, and then which network interface do you want to attach it to? Well, these are all the NICs that are attached to my other VMs. This is an either or. In this case, I don't have to do that. And private IP address, it's actually already doing this. If you associate an elastic IP address with your instance, your current public IP address is released. Yeah, we understand that. So we hit associate. Now we come back to instances, and it should automatically give us a public DNS now and a public IP. So there'd be some more stuff to do here. If you wanted your website to have your own custom DNS name, JustinsWebsite.com, and say I bought the domain name JustinsWebsite.com in GoDaddy, I'd have to go to GoDaddy and go into the DNS manager and create an A record for JustinsWebsite.com and point that A record to 50.40.93.103, and then probably change some settings in WordPress to make that work too. But there's other blog posts out there on how to do that. So at this point, now that we're up, let's go ahead and try getting our DNS name here and see if our WordPress instance is up. So I paste this in, and hit enter. And hopefully what's going to happen is we see, boom, there, users blog, just another WordPress site. So I want to, it's here and it's up, and we could just immediately start configuring it. We're in under 30 minutes, 29 minutes and 43 seconds, and we already have a WordPress instance up and running. One neat thing about Bitnami is they have this little manage icon down here that gives you a bunch of hints and tips and tricks on how to operate this thing. So if we come down here and hit manage, it's going to take us to the bitnami/index.html and give us some settings. So if it was launched through Launchpad or AWS Cloud, the password will be created on first boot of the instance, and you need to follow these instructions to get it. For a default Bitnami instance, the username and password would be user and Bitnami, but for Amazon, they're trying to keep you from getting hacked and just leaving that default password on there and using something to set it. If you hit follow these instructions, it's going to tell you how to get it by going through the log file. Let me just show you. You come over here to EC2, click on the instance, go to Actions, Instance Settings, and do Get System Log. And when you pop this up, it's going to show you the whole log for deploying the server. And hopefully somewhere here towards the end, we're going to see something that tells us it's set the password. Actually, now that I'm looking through here, I'm wondering it may have not run that on this particular one. Yeah, so I don't think, not setting Bitnami passwords. So for some reason it didn't set the Bitnami passwords, which means it should be this user and Bitnami for the password. So if I come back, I know because I'm familiar with WordPress, to get the admin interface, I do a /WP admin on the end. And we're going to use user for the username, and the password is Bitnami. Briefly unavailable for scheduled maintenance. Check back in a minute. Okay, maybe it's still loading. Let's just give it one more minute. Okay, good. It finally finished updating, and we were able to log in with username user and password Bitnami. Since it didn't automatically update the password during that deployment, on yours it may do that, and you get that password from the log. The first thing we immediately need to do is go change the password from default. So we're going to hit user up here, hit edit my profile, come down here to password, and there is a big new strong password, and I'm going to right click after hitting generate password and copy. You know what, since this is a temporary instance, let's just make our password something simple like help165. And it's saying this password is very weak. Please don't use that. But I'm going to go ahead and use it anyway. Don't do this. Make a complicated good password, or use the one that it generated, and then confirm use of weak password to force it to update. And now we can log out. Make sure it changed it. User help165. In fact, I would go further and make another admin account and disable the default user account. Okay, so we would do that. It's just, it takes time, and I want to make this video as short as possible. So make a new user account using your real email address or something else, and then get rid of the default user account, or maybe just disable it. First thing you need to do after you deploy WordPress is update WordPress. Absolutely update WordPress. So if we come over here, updates, it's saying you have the latest version of WordPress. We can check again, so that's great. We don't need to update WordPress, but we have a bunch of plugin updates. So I can select all here and hit update plugins. Update WordPress first, then update all your plugins. Try to stay up to date on all of those things. Otherwise, there's a good chance that you may have a security vulnerability, which means your site could get hacked, which is just not very much fun at all and may require a lot of work. Also, of course, do regular normal backups. So we're waiting for these updates to apply. This might take a little bit of time, so to save time on the video, I'm just going to pause it for a minute, and I'll be back after the updates are complete. All right, those updates didn't take very long, probably less than a minute. And you can see all the updates have been applied successfully. And essentially, we have a functional WordPress instance at this point. You know, I can come over here to posts and add a new post and say testing a new WordPress post. Hello from Justin. And I'm just going to go straight to publishing this. And if I come back to users blog, look, testing a new WordPress post. hello from Justin, leave comment, edit, etc. I'm not going to go into customizing or applying themes or doing any of that stuff. I'm just trying to show you the basis of how to get a WordPress instance up in Amazon. The other thing that we have not done yet is to SSH into our instance and update the operating system and Apache and MySQL and the full LAMP stack and all those components. So let's go through how to do that. So this is our server address. I'm going to copy that, and we're going to actually go back to the desktop and run putty.exe. All right, so paste. We're going to putty into this address. Since I copied and pasted from a website, I need to take that HTTP off. But the other thing I need to do here is set it to use key authentication. We're not using username password authentication. We're using key authentication, which is much more secure. In Putty, you come down here to SSH to the auth section, and then it says private key file for authentication. Hit browse and point it to that PPK that we generated earlier and hit open. And essentially what it should do. Okay, so another thing is this is the fingerprint for the key to make sure you're not subject to a man-in-the-middle attack where somebody's intercepting your request and giving you fake credentials. Technically, what we should do is check this key. So this is the fingerprint. If we come back into Amazon, I'll just show you how to do this because it's a good thing to know how to do. This is our WordPress instance that we deployed. Let's look at that log, the same place I looked for that password earlier, get system log, and scroll through here and see when the instance was deployed. It actually generated the new key, and we should have the fingerprint here. So if we look here, let's see, and compare that to what this is showing us, it ends in B198. We should have a private key that ends in B198 for the SSH instance. Here it is, 011C blah 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 B198. This is the private key, public key pair with this fingerprint, RSA 2048 bits. It matches what is being presented to us, and since it's not a publicly signed key, we can still trust it because we compared the fingerprints. I will say yes. Say, who do you want to log in as? Username is Bitnami. This is all in the Bitnami documentation, and hit enter, and we are authenticated and in our Ubuntu 14.0.4 instance. And what you need to do is the same thing for Linux that you do on Windows or any other operating system, is run the operating system updates. How do you do that? I don't know. Let's go look it up. I know it's actually going to be apt-get, but essentially go to Google and let's say UBU into, oh yes, run updates. So what do you do to do this? First link here, it gives you the command. So you need to use sudo, which lets us change to a essentially administrative profile that allows us to do admin tasks. So sudo apt-get update. So we're going to run that command, and right now it's going through security.ubuntu.com, getting the list of all the updates that we need to install to be completely current. It's done. It's very fast. Amazon ran that and downloaded those at 3.4 megabytes a second. We've got tons of network speed behind us. Sudo apt-get upgrade. Run that command. So it's telling us, okay, 45 need to be upgraded, 4 don't need to be, we need to download 49.8 megabytes of additional archives, and after this operation, 8.1 or 8192, I think that's supposed to actually be kilobyte, or maybe it's just bytes of additional disk space will be used. Small price to pay for being secure, so we hit yes. It's downloading all the updates, it's installing all the updates, and essentially after this operation is done, you have a complete, ready-to-use Amazon EC2 instance running WordPress with all the latest updates. You need to do these tasks on a somewhat regular basis, but besides that, essentially after this is done, you're complete. So the last thing I'm going to do before we essentially end this tutorial is go show you how to delete this instance in case you decide, you know what, that was fun, but I don't want to pay for it, or I messed up and I want to delete it and deploy another one. What do I do to actually get rid of and delete this server completely? So let's let it run these updates. That can take a little while, so we can go back to the EC2 console while they're running and talk about that. So if we come back to Amazon, essentially all you would have to do is select the server that you want to run the operation on, go to Actions, Instance State, and look, you can do stop, reboot, terminate. All right. Just to show you, if I try to go to terminate and hit yes, I can't. And the reason is because these instances have termination protection on and will not be terminated. Use change termination protection to disable that, and then we can delete it. So our update's finished. Just to show you, the blog is still up and running. What would happen if we say turn this thing off? So we come up here, Instance State, and do stop. Just to show you that yes, this is a real website, is a live website. Let's run the command to terminate it. Our SSH session said the system is going down for power off now, exclamation mark. So it knows that it's getting shut down, and then the server unexpectedly closed network connection because it just turned off. If we come back to our blog and we hit refresh, there's going to be essentially no response, and it's going to sit here until it hits the browser timeout and then say site not found because we turned off the server. All right, let's go ahead and delete it. We need to disable termination protection. Oh, it still shows that it's stopping. Let me refresh this page and see if it's finally stopped now. Yeah, we'll have to give it another second. Since it's in a transitory state right now, we have to wait till it's completely stopped down, shut down, and then we can terminate it and do other actions on it. So let's just wait. All right, there it is. It's completely stopped. It finished turning off. We need to disable termination protection before we'll be able to delete it. Come up to Actions, Instance Settings, change termination protection. Yes, disable that protection. And then if we want to delete it, we check it here, Actions, Instance State, Terminate, and it's telling us it's going to clean up associated resources. It's going to delete the hard drive. The default action is for the drive to be deleted when the instance is terminated. Yes, that's what we want to do. And then there's an additional action, which is to release the IP, because it's going to keep that static IP for us unless we check that box. And if you have extra IPs that you requested, but they're not bound to an instance, those will still cost you money. I mean, you get one free IP essentially with your free tier, but if we just deleted it and didn't release the IP, that IP would cost us, I don't know, like $1 a month or something like that. So let's check to release that, hit yes, terminate. And essentially once that's done, the instance is completely gone. It is deleted, and if we wanted to deploy another one with our free tier, we could, and that's how you do the cleanup. The only other things you may need to do besides that is come in to security groups, and this security group that we created for the demo, we may want to delete that. Security groups don't cost money, but I'm just going to delete it to clean everything up. And the other thing is the key pair. You know, we may want to come in here and delete that key pair that we created for the, oh, I have another one from the earlier demo. Delete both those key pairs. I'm not going to use them anymore. I'll just go ahead and delete them. Again, key pairs don't cost money either, but just something to be aware of. Instance is terminated, everything's cleaned up, and we are back to our beginning state. So thank you very much for watching this demo. Again, it was Justin Jones for Fuse Coworking Space Tutorial for May 24th, 2016, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye.